So, this happened back when I was in high school. It involves three of my best friends. I don't want to say their real names, but let's just call them Jimmy, Zeke, and Mark. To this day, we are still very close, especially after what happened. What I'm about to tell you, every word of it is true. People have tried to tell me that we were just seeing things or imagining, but regardless of what anyone else says, we went through the most terrifying experience of our lives that night. That's real. The fear was real. So, this was around junior year of high school. Every summer, we'd head up to Jimmy's family cabin in Alberta, up north, deep in the forest. I looked forward to this every year, swimming, boating, exploring. Up until then, our parents had always accompanied us. But this year, we had turned 17 and we felt old enough to make the trip on our own. It took a lot of convincing, but our parents finally agreed to let us go on our own. This cabin was in a very remote area. I'm talking no cell service, no running water. And what was really unique was the cabin was located on a large island in the middle of a massive lake, over 100 acres wide. So to even reach Jimmy's cabin, we had to park on a gravel road and then take his little boat across the lake to get to the cabin. I'd say it's at least like a half-a-mile boat ride over the water. It took like 10 minutes. Too far to swim. Once you got on the island, there were other cabins there as well, but the closest neighbor was maybe a quarter-mile away at least. So it's pretty serene and isolated and quiet. The cabin itself was a small 2-bedroom with a kitchen and the bathroom at the back. It was pretty bare bones. In fact, there were no curtains on any of the windows. Since the closest neighbors were so far away, I would lay in bed at night looking out the window and my mind would run wild. I always felt like someone was peering in, watching me from the outside, watching me as I slept. It was just my imagination though, so I thought. So back to this particular trip. We're three 17-year-old guys on our own for a whole week without our parents. So we decided to get a little wild and sneaked a bunch of beer to the cabin on the second night we were there. So we were drinking around the campfire, telling stories, and then went to Jimmy's dock to, joke around, enjoy the moon, which was so bright that night. And we're sitting there looking out at the water when suddenly we heard a big splash out somewhere in the lake. It had to be like 50 yards away, like a big fish doing a belly flop or something. It's so quiet out there that a splash like that, it really got our attention. It kind of startled us. So we're looking out over the water trying to see what made that splashing sound when my buddy Mark starts pointing at something. His voice got serious and he's like, "Wait, what is that?" I'm squinting to spot what he's pointing at. When I finally see it on the moonlit lake, all I can say is that it looked like a human head out in the middle of the lake. The moon was so bright that I could see it had long, dark hair, pale white skin. It was bobbing in the light, and it was facing us. The terror that took over my body was so real. We looked at each other and just nervously convinced ourselves that it had to be a loon. A loon like the bird. It's like a duck. The feathers are black and white, so the colors would have been similar, so we just chalked it up to a loon must have popped out of the water and made a splash. And now it's just sitting there. That was the rational explanation. but it was still giving us the creeps because it didn't seem to be moving at all. It was just floating in the same place, staring at us. So we decided to go back inside, go back to the cabin and have a few more drinks, think about something else. We stoked the campfire a bit and then headed up the stairs back inside. The cabin was up a small staircase from the fire pit. Soon I completely forgot about the floating head, thanks to the alcohol, until nature called and I had to use the bathroom. Very badly. The toilet in the cabin was preoccupied. Someone else was in there, so I headed outside to pee amongst the trees. As I was finishing my business at nature there, I gazed out at the beautiful moonlit lake, and I'm enjoying the view when I noticed that the dark circular object was still out there, staring at me. Except now, it was about 30 yards closer. Now I could really see its face. I could see the nose, the eyes, very pale skin, long black hair. My body was overcome with uneasiness, and I ran up the stairs to the cabin door to tell everyone to get out and look at this thing. My buddies all rushed outside, and it was still there, now looking at all of us on the deck of the cabin. It's like it was tracking us, and its head was cocked slightly upward so it could stare at us above, up on the deck. I mean, we were really freaked out, and nobody wanted to go down to the dock anymore. We went inside to calm down, though, we were pretty sure now it was not a loon. It wasn't some bird. It looked like a floating head. One of the guys said maybe it was a log, considering how stiff it looked and that it was just sitting in the same spot, not moving for hours. Maybe the moonlight was playing visual tricks on us. So I guess wishful thinking, we just decided to go with that so we could get our minds off it. I could tell everyone was still pretty uneasy. We stayed up for a few more hours, hanging out inside, drinking some more. It got super late, and I knew I needed to sleep, but I couldn't help myself. I had to take another peek outside to see if it was still there. So I go out the front door and stand on the deck looking out at the water. It had disappeared. I was looking all over, I could not see any trace of the black object. I kind of felt relieved, that the thing had just floated away and it was finally gone. So I decide it's time for bed. And being in the middle of the summer, it was hot that night, and the cabin had no air conditioning, so we always slept with the windows open. It was the only way to stay cool in the summer, to have the night breeze blowing through the cabin. My buddy Zeke and I slept in the living room, while Jimmy and Mark slept in the 2 bedrooms. And no surprise, I had trouble sleeping that night. And I'm lying there, trying to fall asleep. I'm almost asleep when I hear footsteps. Someone is walking around the base of the stairs towards the entrance of the cabin. I hear the creaking on the stairs and then the pacing on the deck in front of the front door. I'm frozen with fear. I can't even muster a whisper to Zeke. It feels like it lasts for minutes hearing the footsteps, and I'm barely breathing. Then suddenly, it sounds like the footsteps rush down the stairs and then spring down the path outside the cabin. I thought my heart was gonna explode out my chest, and I whispered to Zeke to wake up, when suddenly Mark rushes out of his room to us and he has a weird vibe about him, saying that we all need to leave right now. He wakes up Jimmy in his room and he's pressuring him. He's insistent that we need to get out of here. We need to leave right now. I'm like, Mark, what is going on? Because he's being really intense about leaving this second. I will never forget the words he said next. Mark said, as he was falling asleep in his bed, he turned over, to get more comfortable, and saw someone peeking in through the top right side of his bedroom window. Whoever it was shifted away so fast out of sight, but he saw the long black hair, the pale skin, and one black eye. Just thinking through this, for it to be outside that particular window, Mark's window, in that way, that thing had to be 8 feet tall, or standing on something, or mid-air, floating somehow. I don't know, I can't explain it. For the rest of us, we agreed we had to go fast. We packed as much as we could, lightning fast, locking the cabin up, and ran out of there. As I got to the bottom of the stairs, I could see that thing's footprints leading down the path. We all sprinted to the boat, and we all had everything packed in about 5 minutes. As Jimmy started the motor and began ferrying us back onto the lake toward the mainland, I kept staring at the island and the cabin to see if I could see anything. See what that thing was. I didn't see anything. Couldn't find it. When we got back to the shore, we just packed the car and hit the road. It was probably 4 a.m. No one was speaking. We were so disturbed by everything that had happened that night. I've known Mark for years. Whatever Mark saw in the window really shook him to the core. It changed him. The next day we were at a rest stop. I heard him breaking down on the phone, in tears, telling his parents why we were coming home early. He couldn't sleep for months and months, just insomnia. Eventually having to take prescription medication just to get some rest. Yeah, if you're asking me, I can't ever go back to that cabin. In the years that followed, actually Jimmy and Zeke have gone back, and they said it's always been fine since. But I can't do it. Neither will Mark. Jimmy was telling me recently, he talked to neighbors on the island, and the neighbors are telling him, Jimmy, maybe it was just a prank, or someone trying to mess with us, and that maybe Mark seeing them kind of sent them running, catching them in the act kind of thing. But then how does that explain what we all saw floating in the lake? No, it's too many coincidences. Too many disturbing possibilities.